Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about the top 5 standard decks that you will expect to see at BCS. The first BCS in Toronto has concluded and it has shown results for the standard side of things, but we know that BT11 is coming out soon and potentially BT12 will be available during the BCS season. I probably will recover once set 12 comes out as well, but this is pretty much all the way up to DBT11 and pretty much the top 5 decks for standard that you'll see in your Swiss rounds and probably your top cut. If you guys need any coaching for the BCS season, my link is in the bottom right hand corner. Feel free to book a session and we can get started on your season. The first big deck is Gandiva, everyone's favorite. This deck pretty much ran crazy in Japan, and essentially some of the newer decks kind of slowed it down. We did see an influx of it during BRO, but the conversion rate wasn't very good, right? But the deck itself is very strong. It does what it does, and it scales the longer the game goes. So pretty much the longer the game goes, this deck gets out of control, essentially. Yeah, so this is probably one of your big targets and probably the deck to beat for BCS. If you can't beat Gandiva, then you better bring a deck that beats it, because a lot of the field will be playing this deck. There are two kind of versions. One using the Saga line, where it uses the sword, and then there's another build, I guess, that just runs the normal Gandiva ride line, I guess. But otherwise, pretty much everything stays the same. You know, you have Alpha Car, and then you have multi attacks, bind a bunch, and then just scale out of control, right? Obviously, best harvest, one of the best orders to play in Gandiva. Draws your bunch, so pretty much if you know the matchup to Gandiva, you're in pretty good shape, right? The next deck to talk about is Willista, and with the promo support and DBT11, Willista is still strong. It just does what it does. This is the deck that I brought for BRO, and it is as standard as it gets. This deck was built to beat Gandiva, and because this deck purely focuses on the early game, draws a bunch, pretty much drop Romanas in the front row, 20k beaters in the early game, drop a Eureka at the back as 28, absolutely filthy numbers, and that's pretty much what the deck does, right? 4 attacks, 5 attacks, with massive power. The deck really it autopilots, right? The deck just does what it does. Ophelia is probably one of the strongest components in the deck, the fact that you can just restand. And if you have both of them in the front row, both of them don't need to restand, but both of them do get the plus 15k. And then obviously with the Valshablan, you can use it on your on-ride with Persona Ride because you're ditching during the ride phase. So very, very strong deck, probably one of the better decks in the format, and again, one of the top 3 decks probably to look out for. The last 2 decks are a little bit considerable, but obviously I'll put in some other suggestions and other notable decks as well. So those are the big 2. And then the third one is Minerva. Minerva is a rising deck at the moment. Obviously it got the new PR, and Thasus really helps the consistency of the deck. But actually the deck's MVP is not actually Thasus, and it's the grade 1. This grade 1 is so insane, pretty much count +1, soul +1, draw 1, call 1. And then at the end of the battle that it boosts, you put the whole column into soul and salvage a Genesis from the hand. Salvage from drop to hand. It literally does everything. You can fish for your Persona rides. You can fish for a Genesis card to ditch for Minerva if you don't have it in hand, or you have to commit it as an attacker. And then that card alone allows you to reuse Chamomile. Chamomile is pretty much your multi-attacker. This deck can range from 3 to potentially 7 or even 8 attacks. I did it and it was really, really filthy at locals, and I'm sorry to ever had to kind of deal with that. But yeah, the deck is very, very strong, super consistent, and the fact that you can scry the top card of your deck with Minerva to kind of alter the way I guess the cards kind of pan out for you, very, very strong. And then as well, you know, you're playing Melissa's, literally free boosters, or even if you put it in the front row, you put the magical girl at the back, you suck it in, and then pretty much the next turn you have a Melissa to call onto the board. And the best thing about this grade 1, it frees up the field. Why is that good? Because against Gandiva, if you're freeing up your field, then Gandiva has less cards to retire, and if you keep it all the same grade, then they're all spot retires. So very, very strong grade 1. Pretty much if you draw it, you're winning BCS. Like, that grade 1 is ridiculous. So yeah, those are the 3 big decks. Now we're gonna look at one of the other decks that I feel is kind of overlooked just because everything else is kind of faster, and that is Chronojet. Chronojet obviously got restricted with the GG and the swirler thing. That restriction didn't really affect this deck very much. It's just that, you know, swirlers don't get big or whatever, but to be honest, it doesn't really affect the way Chronojet operates. The deck itself is just strong, right? The longer the game goes, the more G-Zone you have. This has, you know, a ride down into grade 3, and then pretty much has guard restrict. The deck is very, very strong. It can still play the early game. You know, you still have Gangaram, still have GGs, and then now you have on-hit pressure with Zargon to just fill your soul blast 2 for GG and Gangaram, and just draw a bunch in the early game. And then in the mid game, obviously you're operating with Upstream Dragon, jumping down, and then, you know, back to grade 1, time leaping something to grade 2, and then pretty much abusing your Fate Riders. And then as, you know, the game goes on, then you're going into your next stage, riding down into your Chronojet Dragon, and then, yeah, that's pretty much how the deck operates. Pretty sure everyone knows about this deck. The deck has been out for so long, but the deck hasn't changed, and it's very, very strong. But I think people are really overlooking this deck because the other 3 are just very, very strong, much quicker than Chronojet, but not to say that, you know, during your Swiss rounds, you're not going to see any of this, because you will. And the best thing is that you probably will see it because this is affordable, right? 1 deck set and you've got the whole deck at your arsenal for the BCS. Probably one of the most pre-constructed, ready to play BCS decks there is this season. So if you are, you know, getting into the game, Chronojet is probably the best bet for you to kind of pick up and then play at your, you know, BCS that is maybe like an hour away or whatever. So yeah, Chronojet is the 4th deck, and then the 5th deck is actually pretty surprising. And I'm not gonna say that the power level of this deck is the reason why I put it here. I think it's because of the popularity, and that is Zorga. A lot of people have brought Zorga. We saw Zorga come second in Toronto. We saw a lot of Zorgas, you know, topping BRO. And just because of how popular this deck is, you will see this deck, right? Regardless of whichever BCS you go to, there are going to be packed numbers, you know, 7 rounds, 8 rounds. You are bound to see this deck, right? Whether it's floating around you, maybe you verse it, maybe you don't verse it, but around you, you will see this deck. And if you pair this deck, you have to know how to play against it. The deck itself, you know, just like I did before, Shadow Cloak, you mill a order that you don't have in the bin. This creates Dragon Tree markers. You still have your Roman Prison Dragon, you call out early. You know, you're playing your grade 2 orders, and then, yeah, you're pretty much bringing them out, rushing early, and then you have Kill Severing, pretty much the multi-attack on the Dragon Tree marker, and that's kind of how the deck operates, right? The good thing is that if you're going second as Zorga, the mask allows you to ride and then persona ride, which means you automatically gain +10, as well as the inherent +10 when you Alchemagic. Plus 20k to the front row on your grade 3 ride is actually very, very strong. So yeah, obviously a deck to look out for, just because of how popular the deck is. So yeah, that's that. And I'm just gonna note some of these decks, you know, these 5 decks I think are the most popular and probably the decks to kind of look out for. There are some other decks that I think should have some credit, and the first one is Messiah. Purely because of the accessibility of this deck. You know, you buy a deck set and then you have the deck as it is, but this is less accessible than Chronojet purely because you have to get Mikani, and Mikani itself is pretty pricey. So yeah, maybe people who, you know, are playing Jet will probably prefer to play Jet because there's less investment in the deck itself. But you know, you can still pick up Messiahs, you can borrow your friend's Mekanis, and you can still play. So I think Messiah is also, you know, a formidable deck. Probably not the best deck to bring, but I think it's still a deck that you have to prepare for. Another one is Youthberg. Everyone loves Youthberg, you know, Bushimat loves Youthberg. Everyone loves Youthberg. It's a very edgy deck. Everyone's gonna play it, right? There will be, you know, diehard fans like Matt who, you know, play Youthberg, and you know, that's just the reality, right? People will play it, and you probably won't see it as often as some of the other decks I've explained, but probably a deck to look out for. Another one is Hexob. Hexob is one of those decks that you'll see round 3, round 4. This deck will catch people off guard within the first 2 rounds, or if people don't know how to play against it, then you will see, you know, decks like Hexob just win, right? Obviously, this is probably not the best counter deck, and obviously, come DBT 12, Bastion Accord comes out, so that overrules this deck completely. But we'll talk about that in another video later on. But I think, you know, people who are not expecting Hexob may just lose to this because they are unprepared. And you know, you see these round 3, round 4, and if you are absolutely stacked, you're having the greatest day of your life, you know, you will see this in top 8 as well. And then the last deck is Eva. And why am I saying Eva? Eva with the set 11 support is pretty formidable, and people would have kept Eva from the, you know, the era where it was, you know, Jet and Eva. So these decks will just come back to life again. And a lot of these people, you know, you just splash a few new Evas, change the order ratios, put in habit zone. I call it habit zone. Pretty much the cycle card, and yeah, that's pretty much the deck, right? And you know, Eva is waifu. People like waifus, they're gonna play it. So you probably will see this. Probably not as high capacity as some of the other decks like Gandiva or Willista, but still a deck to look out for. And that's pretty much the top 5 plus 4 extra decks that you'll probably see at your BCS coming up in the next maybe couple of weeks. I know that there is a few coming up. So Illinois is coming up. I think Austria is coming up as well. So yeah, there's a lot of events going up, and we're going to cover all the tournament results. So feel free to subscribe to this channel. You get all the notifications, pretty much all the insights on tournament results that happen all around the world, from the JP side, from the English side. If you guys like this video, pop a like, comment down below what you guys think of the, you know, top 5 decks that I'm depicting. Am I missing any? You know, if there are decks that you think I'm missing, pop them down in the comments below, and you know, share your thoughts. If you guys haven't already, pop subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.